according to Scripture, all we're supposed to do is watch and endure. So we can plan financially to help us endure as much as we can. We can stockpile food as much as we can to help us endure. But we're also instructed to watch, which is very important, to be knowledgeable of what's going on in the world. Watch, the economic reports, watch the political analysis, watch everything, because if we are in this time, we need to be prepared.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into CrushTheStreet.com. I'm Kenneth Amaduri, and I'm joined today with Clinton Kowach, and he's an author and a researcher, and he's written the book Submissive Wisdom, which I'm sure we're going to get into in some of the discussion that we're going to have today. He likes to focus on macroeconomics and how it affects the currencies, precious metals, where he sees the markets going, and he relates it to biblical prophecy. He likes gold, strong believer in gold, strong believer in silver, and even Bitcoin. Clinton, thanks for coming on the show with me today.
Thank you very much for having me, Kenneth.
Well, here, let's start here. Trump is certainly shaking up the establishment. And, I just want to kind of give you an open floor here as to where you see the current political situation and where this is going, in your opinion.
Yeah, not a problem. We have a lot of issues happening around the world, and we can look at the Trump inauguration and presidency and just a little bit of the chaos that's going on just with the transition between more of a political structure to more of a corporate structure. And we see, for instance, like the issues with the people they put into cabinets, having issues with not talking about the secrets that have been coming out by endorsing some of Trump's products or, the businesses that his family has. And so we have a lot of kind of mixing of taboo topics that have never been presented on the presidential level. And the problem is the rest of the world is seeing this, and they're not really sure what to expect. We have, China, for instance, that's really having a lot of issues with Trump, and a lot of it, started with the way that Trump was actually talking about China. And the way that the United States is set up right now is we are in a global economy, and we are set up to where we need the rest of the world to help us with global trade. And with the Trump administration, he's more of an isolationist, to where he wants to pull the businesses back to the United States, wants to develop the United States economy, and that is absolutely wonderful, and that is definitely a direction that we need to head. The problem is we have gone very far into a global market, and for the United States to completely pull out, it's going to be very detrimental to the entire world economy. And it's going to be very, very important to see how Trump maneuvers this. If he's able to, be the incredible deal maker that we think that Trump is going to be, and he's able to negotiate with some of these countries that we may not have had the best ties with, and see about growing our economic footprint with those countries. But it could also go the opposite direction, to where instead of making it more of an open highway between the different countries, how we actually have more of an issue with, the countries kind of fighting more an isolationism or more nationalism and bringing, everything back to their countries, and then trying to have this global struggle on that point.
Well, but you say the word isolationist, and that kind of has a negative connotation. And really, Trump is trying to bring jobs back to the country, as opposed to encourage capital to flow overseas, which we've seen for so many years with policies that we've had in this country, which basically incentivize money to go elsewhere. Now he's saying, you know what? I know we're at a breaking point. He's even said that we're in a bubble, and it's probably going to crash on my watch. But he wants to do, again, what is best for the country. And again, it's because we're at that breaking point. He's dealing with a lot of problems. Of course, he's not perfect, but it certainly is a breath of fresh air that we have someone in office that wants to put America first for a change rather than do what's in the best interests of every other country in the world.
Exactly, and I do agree with that. And it's very important that we do strengthen, American businesses, and we do allow, these companies that have a lot of capital trapped overseas to be able to come back to build either factories or, create American jobs or whatever the strategy may be. The problem with that, though, is we have created the laws to keep, inflation overseas and to keep it in other countries, and we can actually see what's happened with Venezuela, what's happened with Greece, what's happening, with Egypt, and also what happened in India. So the whole plan was to keep that money overseas, to keep everything away from the United States, so that way inflation didn't hit. Now, the problem is we know inflation is going to hit. It's an economic certainty, and we are right now in a more of a deflationary cycle. But once they allow that money to come back to the United States, and have these companies bring that money back in, then we do run the risk of having an increase in inflation.
Sure. And I definitely agree with that. And it's unfortunate that we are going to have to suffer the consequences of just expansionary monetary policy that we've dealt with for, many years now. I mean, you look at the Fed's balance sheet, you look at what we've done over the last administration here. We've doubled the national debt, and we didn't even get 1 year of 3% growth here in the country with just this ballistic amount of economic stimulus. In any other time, that would have created just incredibly insane amount of growth. Yet we only moderately grew with fudged, manipulated figures. Clinton, I want to get into how this ties in, because I know you do a lot of research on this. How does this tie into what you're seeing biblically in the Bible here?
Well, one of the major points that we can talk about is numerous economists and numerous analysts that have either been on your show or numerous other shows are talking about the bubble within the economy, talking about the bubble within the stock market, talking about the bond bubble, talking about the bubble, in numerous different avenues. And what that shows is that we have a major economic crisis that's happening. Now, when you look at Scripture, is there an indication that there's an economic calamity in Scripture? And yes, there is. And it's actually in Revelations, and it's in chapter 6, and it is the opening of the third seal. So you have the opening of the first and the second prior to the opening of the third seal, which describes a time when man will work an entire day's wages to purchase a loaf of bread, which indicates more of kind of a hyperinflationary economy, or an issue where either the value is completely devalued to the point that it doesn't purchase what it used to. So we can see that developing from major economic analysts that can see that happening right now. So, but you have the opening of the two seals prior to that. And according to major, religious scholars, the first seal is a rider on a white horse, and he has a crown and he has a bow. So he has a kingdom and he has a weapon. That could be any world leader that's risen at any time. The second talks about peace being taken from the earth, and man will kill each other, and a great sword is given. So we see that there's peace that's taken. We see possibly a large, maybe civil war on a large scale, or at least in numerous different areas, to where peace is actually taken from the earth. And when you look at the current analysis of the world that we live in, has peace been taken from the earth? And you look at what's going on with the so-called Muslim ban. You look what's going on with the immigration, looking to deport a large portion of people. You look at the economic calamity. You look at the split of the United States 50-50 between Republicans and Democrats. We have a loss of peace that is coming. So we do see the development of the second seal as well. And so the second has to pass before the third.
Clinton, let me just jump in right there. And what makes you so sure about this being specific to our time period? And, one can say specifically about the, working a day's wage to buy a loaf of bread. I mean, there's 2.4 trillion people that make $2 a day. I think that this has been a fact that around the world right now, and there's a lot of people that are just making enough just to buy a loaf of bread each day. And, what makes the peace and the disruptions that we're seeing now different than maybe what we saw in the 1940s or the 1930s during World War II, when everyone was looking around thinking that this might be the end of times, considering the mayhem that we're having. I'm just curious, what is it specific about now that is connecting these biblical prophecies?
Yeah, not a problem. And in all those different times, people have always said that we were in the end times or we were in prophetic times. Even you look back to Isaac Newton. Isaac Newton believed he was living in the end times. So it's not uncommon for people to say this throughout. Now, one important factor is that everything will be on a global scale. We can see every sign that has been presented throughout the study of prophecy, and it has happened in numerous different times, but nothing has happened at the same time on a global scale. Now, to go to a different prophecies, you can look at the Ezekiel at chapter 38-39. A lot of people talk about this as the Gog-Magog war, and what it describes is the ancient people who make up currently of Libya, Turkey, Iran, Russia, Ethiopia or Sudan, Yemen, and I believe Syria's in there as well. All these countries joined together in an alliance, and they actually go down and attack Israel according to prophecy. Now, we have not seen the alliance of the Muslim nations happen, and the closest that it's been able to do since the Ottoman Empire was Sadat in Egypt. And he was assassinated before he could fulfill that. Now, the problem with this so-called Muslim ban is it is joining those exact countries together. It is helping them make a caliphate that they have not been able to do in a very, very long time. And we can see that Israel is a major sore. So this could be the development of this Gog-Magog war. So it's not necessarily saying that, the prophecy is just for the end times. There are numerous other prophecies that we see fulfilling. We can look at the destruction of Damascus. Supposedly, Damascus will be destroyed and become a ruinous heap that will never be inhabited again. And considering Damascus is one of the longest lasting civilizations that we have in the world, that's a very big point. But considering what's happening in Syria with Assad, Damascus is in play as well. So if these are possibilities, which we're just talking about possibilities, we're all trying to predict the future and no one can really do that, but it's a possibility, we have to look at what the economic response is to that globally. And we know during times of war, we have manufacturing that goes up, which is possibly a reason that we're trying to get a lot of these car manufacturers back to the United States, because during World War II, it's not like they produced cars, they produced weaponry or stuff for war. We can look at the surplus that we have within the automobile industry to where the manufacturers are having a difficult time selling their new products. So there's no reason to bring these companies back to build factories to actually build more cars, because we really aren't selling as many as we need to. So there's a different reason for that. We also look at the buildup of all the hollow point bullets that were purchased. Even the post office had a large number of bullets purchased for them. Why would we need a large-scale portion of that unless we were planning on going to war? And you can see what's developing also with the United States and Russia, to where war is going to be a major impact in the economy. And so that just means that commodity prices are going to go up. That means that more risky investments are going to go down. So we uncertainty in the market, we have the stock market, there's a strong possibility that's going to go down, not only from war, but also for the bubble or the deflationary cycle that we're into. So we can see this start to progress down this path.
Well, Clinton, I want to get into precious metals here a little bit. I know you're an advocate for precious metals, and you touched on it. Let's just kind of, I'll kind of give you an open mic again. Why do you like gold, and how does it tie into the Bible here?
Yeah, the biggest thing is I'm a big history buff, and I believe that throughout history you can see how people actually interact in certain situations. And you can look at the United States and look at the Roman Empire, and there's a lot of parallels between both of the empires. Now, during the Roman Empire, they had, where a Roman soldier could work for a day and receive one, I believe it was a shekel. It's a silver coin the size of a dime. And he was able to purchase his clothes, his house, his food, everything with that one coin per day. Now, the Roman Empire devalued that and ultimately became to where that coin never had silver in it anymore, and that was right at the fall of the Roman Empire. But we can look and see how during that time, the Romans used silver as their main purchasing power. Now, we look at today, we have gold and we have silver that have both been changed from a monetary metal to more of a commodity. And I disagree with that. I still believe gold and silver are more of a monetary metal, and that'll become more prevalent. We can see the development that's happening with the exchange in China. We can see the manipulation that's coming out with Deutsche Bank with the silver market. And all those just indicate that they lean to more of an economic crisis. And when it comes to gold, silver, Bitcoin, anything that is going to be outside of the currency markets is going to be valuable for the sheer fact that it's going to be a safety haven. It's going to be the opportunity for someone to have something in a time of crisis. If we are in this prophetic time and things do get incredibly difficult, then people need to have something to be able, with value, to be able to barter or be able to sell, to be able to buy more higher commodities. Historical standpoint, Judas betrayed Jesus for 40 pieces of silver. Now, those 40 pieces of silver end up buying a plot of land that is currently being used as a cemetery. So 40 pieces of silver bought a plot of land, which is intrinsic value, which it cannot go to zero. So the use of gold and silver is to help during the crisis when the currency markets actually drop. And we are in this transition from multiple currencies to a possible one world currency, which is where Bitcoin may play into place, or some other digital currency can play into place, or gold and silver, according to what the BRICS nations is doing, what China's trying to do, to where they are trying, I believe, stabilize their currency with the use of gold and silver. So as this currency war or trade war, or however you want to describe it, continues between the United States and China, it is going to be a war of currency. We see Iran is actually going to be leaving, using the dollar to exchange oil. So the petrodollar is in trouble as well. So the United States has to find some way to continue the relevance of the U.S. dollar or crash the U.S. dollar. If they crash the U.S. dollar, then gold and silver, Bitcoin, land, any major commodity are going to be incredibly valuable because it's going to be very hard to get your hands on those items. If they continue using the U.S. dollar, then we have issues overseas to where the economies overseas are going to falter, their currencies are going to be devalued, and then being American with the U.S. dollar is going to be very cheap by everything overseas. And that's the strength of the U.S. dollar will allow that, but it just depends on how the United States and China work out their currency war that they're starting to develop.
Clinton, let's touch here on war. You reminded me of something, and I know is actually in the Bible, and the Bible predicts that 1/3 of the world will be wiped out in some sort of war, and that's over 2 billion people. If you use today's figures here, I'm curious, what are your thoughts as to that, and do you think we're heading in this direction?
Unfortunately, yes, I do think we're heading in this direction. And that is actually the opening of the fourth seal, which happens after the economic calamity. So, if you follow that lineage, you have a rise of a leader, you have massive peace taken from the earth, you have an economic calamity, and then you have a war that Hades and death come down, and 1/3 of the world is destroyed, and it however that happens is going to be absolutely horrible for a lot of people. Now, there is also a prophecy that talks about men standing there and their eyes will melt from their sockets and the skin will melt from their bodies. So we can see that actually with modern warfare, we actually have weapons that can do that. Where prior in history, we were not able to do that. You look at, for instance, the Georgia Guidestones, which we don't even know who put that up there, but it's like a modern day 10 Commandments. And the very first one talks about depopulation in the world to 50 million people. And I know Ted Turner has also come out and said this exact same thing. So if that is like a global agenda to, decrease the population to sustain life on this earth, the easiest way to do that is war, unfortunately. And in the climate that we are at, you can see war developing everywhere. Either it's going to be war between Israel and Palestine and the Israel, the Muslim countries, war between possibly the breakup of the EU. We have war between Russia and the United States, possibly. We have war between China, Taiwan, Japan, and the United States. There's all these different possibilities, and we have to be diligent to look at those, because if it's a possibility, we have to plan for that possibility.
Well, and then you're begging the question, how do we plan for that possibility? And I assume you're talking about nuclear war. Is this where this is headed?
I hope not. I really, really hope not. But anytime you have countries that have nuclear weapons that are at odds with each other, that's a possibility. The biggest thing is you can look back to the Great Depression. And during the Great Depression, more millionaires were created during that time than any time in history. And how did they do that? Well, they maneuvered their assets in the proper way. I remember coming across an interview of this lady when she was 7 years old. And she would go, her and her sister would knock on doors to try to get a loaf of bread to eat during the Great Depression. But there was this one family within their apartment that bought a brand new house, bought brand new cars, had brand new clothes. And she asked her mom, she's like, is this family able to do it when we can't even get bread to eat? And her mom replied, because that family had gold and silver. And you can see, if gold and silver continues to increase in value and they decrease and they actually get rid of this manipulation, we know gold and silver is going to go through the roof. And that also includes Bitcoin as well. So if that is the case, that is your best opportunity to protect yourself. Because if hyperinflation kicks in, we have a currency crisis that happens, a commodity that used to be a monetary metal, and chances are will be a monetary metal to begin again, is going to be your strongest asset. And I actually tend to lean more towards silver, for the sheer fact that if you look at the above land stockpiles of gold versus silver, every ounce of gold throughout history has been held onto and stored, where every ounce of silver is now being used in technology, used in band-aids, clothes, catalytic converters, anything you was being up. So now silver is becoming more rare than gold. So if that trend continues, then silver could be the investment of a lifetime.
Well, Clinton, I want to thank you for coming on the show with me today. Is there anything else that you had on your mind that you wanted to add to leave our audience with before we said goodbye here?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is anytime you look at this stuff, it's easy to get overwhelmed or have a negative view on it. But the biggest thing is to look and understand what we're supposed to do in this time. And according to Scripture, all we're supposed to do is watch and endure. So we can plan financially to help us endure as much as we can. We can stockpile food as much as we can to help us endure. But we're also instructed to watch, which is very important, to be knowledgeable of what's going on in the world. Watch, the economic reports, watch the political analysis, watch everything, because if we are in this time, we need to be prepared.
It's good advice right there, everyone. Clinton Kowach, everyone. And if people want to reach out to you, learn more about what you're doing and the developments that you have, where would they go and what would they find?
Yeah, the easiest way is to go to my website, clintonkowach.com, and my last name is spelled Kowach. Also, I have a very strong following on Twitter, and that is the best way to get my news feed of what's going on in the world, different news articles throughout, either macroeconomics or political or, spiritual or whatever it may be. So that's the best way to follow me, is those two sources.
Thanks so much, sir. I really appreciate you coming on.
Great. Thank you for having me.